Nu ska vi faktiskt snart ge oss in på en miljö som ni alla känner väldigt väl. Har ni aldrig mött det tidigare så kan jag lova att de allra flesta av er har arbetat mycket i den här miljön det sista halvåret. Vi ska nämligen ha med oss en gäst över en Teams-länk.
Yeah.
Anna, vem är det vi har på ingång?
Ja, det känns ju otroligt spännande att vi faktiskt idag kan presentera här Jude Sharon. Är du med oss, Mr. Sharon? Are you with us?
I'm with you.
Good. Welcome.
Thank you. I'd love to be there in person, but of course, there are travel restrictions in place. I would also like to be able to give this presentation in Swedish, since the average Swede speaks far better English than I do, but I'm afraid my limited talents don't stretch that far. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Amazon's culture of innovation. But before I do, just a brief introduction. My name is Jude Sheeran. I'm head of cloud innovation across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. At Amazon, I live in the education business, and I've spent most of my career in some shape or form worrying and working on the skills gap. And I sit on an advisory board to government in the UK about how we're going to try and close the digital skills gap. So it's great to be here. Fantastically important theme. And what I'm going to talk about, as I say, is innovation at Amazon. And I hope that it will give you an idea of at least how Amazon works and the type of people that we like to hire, the types of personalities and skills that we're looking for. Because I'm not there, I'm going to have to ask you to flip through the slides. So let's go to the next one, please. This is one of my favorite quotes. I work in innovation, so I suppose it would be. But it really does echo Amazon's view about the importance of innovation, in particular digital innovation. Innovation is now recognized as the single most important ingredient in any modern economy. In short, it is innovation, more than the application of capital and labor, that makes the world go round. And Amazon has been known for a long time as an innovative organization. And I'm, as I say, going to tell a few stories about our 25 or so year history and how innovation has been at the heart of our growth and most of the things that we have done. Next slide, please. And we'll go through to the next slide. We've said enough about that. So Amazon's mission has always been to be Earth's most customer-centric company. I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means and how we bring that statement to life. But you can be sure that the hundreds of thousands of people on our staff base their work on that mission. Next slide, please. Innovation at Amazon always starts with the customer. It's extremely difficult to get anything off the ground, anything going, unless you can root that innovation, that change, in a customer want or need. And I'm going to talk about the mechanisms that assure that that's the case. Next slide, please. So by way of example, this is an early shot of one of our fulfillment centers, and you'll see that there's a fair amount of space between the aisles. And that is, or was, to allow our staff to collect the merchandise that our customers wanted, pack them, and ship them as quickly as they could. And so we needed the space for different people to be working at the same time down those aisles. Next slide, please. This is a more recent image, and there are at least two major benefits of this new configuration. You'll see straight away that the racks are much closer together. That means we were able to make our fulfillment centers twice as productive. We're using half the amount of space, essentially. And you'll see these strange orange boxes underneath the stacks. These are robots that we built and which move the racks to the picker. So whereas before the picker was running around, now the robots bring the product to the picker, who's able to more quickly pack and get them out to our customers. So not only did we reduce the amount of space we needed to run our fulfillment centers, we were able to ship them more quickly. And really the point I want to make here isn't about this particular innovation. It's about our culture. This was an innovation that came from the people that work in this environment. We don't have a department of innovation that has the exclusive rights over innovation. In fact, every Amazon employee is both a leader and an innovator. And so this is an example of a major innovation that came from the very people that work in this environment. Next slide, please. That's just a close-up of the same robot, which, by the way, can lift almost half a ton, 450 kilos, and there are bigger models that can lift 1,350 kilos, and we have tens of thousands of these things in our fulfillment centers. Please. This is an image of an Amazon Go store. Some of you may have heard of these stores. This is a picture of one in Seattle. And it stems from a deep understanding of our customers' dislike of queuing. Something as simple as that. We spent time understanding what it was that our customers wanted, for example, during their lunch hours or having just finished work. And what they wanted was a very quick experience to go and get some basics and not spend their precious time queuing. At Amazon Go stores, you walk through, you identify yourself via an app on your way in, and from that point on, you're free to pick and choose whatever you want, pop it in your bag, and simply leave. There's no tills, there's no queues. And as you leave, you receive your invoice, and it's charged from your Amazon account. I tried to trick the system with my wife last summer in this store, in fact, in Seattle, and it's extremely reliable. You can't fool it. You can't take things off the shelf and put them back. It knows exactly what you're up to, and it's run by a system of cameras in the roof that understands what it is you're picking and choosing. Next, please. And if you click, there should be some points that come up on that slide. There you go. So when we talk about our culture of innovation, there are four key concepts. Our obsession with our customers. We start every process with the customer and work backwards, and I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. Our long-term thinking. We're very stubborn on our vision, but very flexible on the details, and I'll give a couple of examples of that concept. We understand, everybody understands, that in order to be inventive, in order to innovate, we have to be willing to fail. And again, I've got a couple of examples of our more spectacular failures, which actually didn't end up so bad, as I'll explain. We also know that we have to be willing to be misunderstood for a long time. And again, I shall talk about an example of that. Next slide, please. This is what we call the Amazon flywheel, and it's at the basis of our organization and always has been since the very beginning. We believe that if we grow, we will be able to lower our costs, pass those costs onto our customers, which will increase traffic through our e-commerce site. That will attract sellers because there's more buyers, which will increase selection. And together with lower prices, that will continue to improve our customer experience and lead to growth. So that is what we call the Amazon flywheel. And that is what we try to instill in our developments. Next slide, please. So I mentioned just briefly a moment ago that we're stubborn on our vision but flexible on the details. And if you flick to the next slide, you may recognize this device. On the left of the screen, this was our first attempt at creating the Amazon Kindle. I'm not sure how popular they are in Sweden, but they're wildly popular in the States and here and other countries. And the first attempt to build this device didn't go as well as the latest attempt, which you can see on the right of your screen. The first attempt tried to do too much. It was clunky, it was big, but we felt certain that customers wanted to have, in the palm of their hand, within a minute, access to much more literature than they could possibly carry. And we were certain of that want and that desire of our customers. And so we kept iterating. In other words, we were stubborn on our vision, which was based on a deep customer understanding. And we kept iterating until we got to the wildly popular Paperwhite version you can see on your right there. Next, please. I also mentioned that we're willing to be misunderstood for a long time. And if you look at the next slide, there is a cover story, Business Week, some 14 years ago, about our first move into cloud. We run the world's biggest cloud, And the analysts and the journalists didn't really understand why we're doing that. They perceived it as a risky bet, as it says there. And yet, within not too long, and certainly now, Amazon Web Services continues to impress, as the article says there, and we continue to grow at a rapid rate. And so the point here is that although our supporters, financial supporters and others didn't really understand what we were doing, we were comfortable with that. We understood what our customers wanted, what they needed, and we were prepared to endeavor to help them with that, regardless of what our analysts may have thought at the time. Next slide, please. On top of those basic concepts, we organize in these 4 ways. We have a series of mechanisms that I'll talk about, and this is really what we mean by our culture of innovation. We have an architecture. I'll come back to some general points about our culture, the types of people we attract, and that may be of most interest for the purposes of this gathering today. And then a little bit about our organization, how we organize for innovation. Next, please. So as I've said a couple of times now, we have this notion of being obsessed with our customers and working backwards from the customer. What we are trying to avoid here is believing that we know what's best, creating products and services, throwing them at our customers and hoping they stick. What we do at Amazon is spend most of our time, the vast majority of our time, really understanding not only our customers, but what they want, what they need, what their challenges and opportunities are. And once we're satisfied that we really understand them, we work backwards from there in the manner I'm about to describe in order to innovate solutions to those challenges and opportunities. Next slide, please. When you join Amazon, at least when I joined, you're given this to hang around your neck. And these are the 5 questions that we call the working backwards questions, which help guide us backwards from our customers and their wants and needs. Who is the customer? What is the customer problem or opportunity? Is the most important customer benefit of what we're innovating clear? How do we know what our customers need or want? And this is an example of us checking ourselves. What is the data that confirms that is what our customers actually want or need, not what we think is cool or what might work? And lastly, what the customer experience looks like. And I'll show you an example of that in just a moment. Next slide, please. One of the ways in which we communicate our ideas during the innovation process is to write mock press releases. So as you can see, this is actually a real press release from the innovation process from the Kindle back in 2007. And so we have very small teams that decide to innovate in parallel with others, and I'll come back to that. And the way they communicate their idea is to write a press release as if we were releasing that new product or service. It's for internal use only. Of course, when that innovation comes to launching, we write a completely separate press release with a completely different team. But the purpose of this mechanism is to provide a very short, concise account of what it is we're innovating. We share it widely, we gain feedback, and we share it with operations and finance and marketing and legal and whoever we need to share it with. And they're able to consume this idea very quickly. We all read the press every day. We're all used to this, digesting information in this way. And they're able to spot holes. What about this? What about that? And they feed it back until the press release is complete. And Amazon Web Services, for example, $40 billion run rate business is the result of one of these press releases, which went through nearly 40 iterations before we were convinced we had it right. Next slide, please. We also produce something called the frequently asked questions, and there are 2 sets. One is to deal with questions that we anticipate that our customers might ask. What does it cost? What sort of support will I get, etc. And another is for internal stakeholders, so the various teams, for example, that I just mentioned. And what we're trying to do here is preempt their questions and offer answers in order to quicken the process of releasing new innovations and testing our thinking, that we've thought through all the potential issues with the innovation. Next, please. And this is my favorite piece. Not everyone likes drawing, but we at Amazon think it's extremely important to be able to provide a picture of the new customer experience. And there is a correlation between the age of the idea, the maturity of the idea, and the quality of the drawings. On the left, you can see a quick sketch of a web page, and on the right, you can see a slightly better cartoon of the new customer experience. And we use this again to very efficiently communicate our ideas. Next, please. Architecture's a little more complex, but it's a super important point. If you go to the next slide, you'll see a perplexing image. This is actually a real image of, without getting too technical, our microservices architecture. And so what we have at Amazon is a lot of very loosely coupled systems, which we are able to innovate and change in parallel. So we don't have a gatekeeper that's holding back innovation. There's no point encouraging hundreds of thousands of people to innovate if they have to join a queue and wait a year for the team to enact that innovation. What we are able to do, because of our microservices architecture in part, is innovate and execute on that innovation in parallel. We deploy roughly one change a second across our network of systems, our architecture of systems. Next, please. And so, as we say here, we're creating powerful self-service platforms that allow thousands of people to boldly experiment and accomplish things that would otherwise be impossible or impractical. There are no queues, there's no gatekeepers. The culture enables, not only enables, but expects people to innovate, experiment, try new things. And I think as we think back to the theme of the gathering today and the types of skills and attitudes that organizations like Amazon need, it's these types of progressive attitudes, brave attitudes that, and of course, people who want to join organizations where they're free to innovate and try new things on systems that allow them to do that. Next, please. So a little bit about our culture. Next, please. We can go to the next slide. There you go. So at Amazon, like almost every organization I've ever worked for, at least, we have a series of what we call leadership principles, a set of behaviors that describe Amazonians. You can see customer obsession right at the top there. It's not the only leadership principle, but it is an extremely important one. And all the others are alive at Amazon. We take these leadership principles very seriously. It's a very unusual day that passes without mention of a few of these leadership principles in the context of hiring people or judging our performance or making a change or whatever it might be. We live by these. They're not just words painted on walls. They form the basis of our judgment of ourselves and our performance and our decision making. By the way, since I'm talking about decision making at Amazon, we have a very clear view on what we call one-way and two-way doors. One-way door is a decision that you make that is difficult or impossible to reverse. And two-way doors are okay. You can make a decision, try something out, and walk back through the door if it doesn't work out. And it's a very simple concept, but it enables people to make courageous decisions when it's not overly risky to the organization. Next, please. So we encourage experimentation. If you move to the next slide, this is a copy of a letter which, from 2015, that our founder, Chief Executive Jeff Bezos, sent our analysts and shareholders. And it's fairly unusual, I'd suggest, to open a letter to these people about a celebration of our failure. And he says that we have plenty of practice. At Amazon, failure is not a negative thing. It's a necessary product of innovation. If you're not failing, the chances are you're not innovating enough. And so at Amazon, we acknowledge and we celebrate failure as a symptom of mass innovation. Next slide, please. And here are two examples of our failures. The first on the left of your screen, I'm not sure how popular eBay is in Sweden, but I think the last time I spoke there, people knew what it was at least. And so Amazon Auction was an equivalent of eBay, an online auction platform. And eventually we shut it down. We did a lot of work on figuring out what our customers could get out of our version of an online auction platform, but it didn't work. And that's okay. In fact, because we had invested so much time understanding what our customers wanted and needed, and work backwards from that, we were able to use much of the investment, the technology that we had developed for Amazon Marketplace, which, as I'm sure you know, enables third-party sellers to sell their products on Amazon.com. And so all was not lost. On the right, we have the Fire Phone. This device, again, big investment. We thought we could do more for our customers by offering this smartphone. And the same story, it didn't work out. We cancelled it. We have a warehouse full of them if anyone's interested. But the technology we developed for the Fire Phone has since been recycled in products like the Kindle and Alexa and so on. So the point here is working backwards from deep understandings of customers' wants and needs somewhat protects the downside of failure. But nevertheless, failure is a critical part of innovation. Next, please. We have this concept at Amazon called two pizza teams. And essentially what it means is that no team should be too big to feed from two pizzas. And there are a series of jokes about pizzas being huge in America, or, you know, if it were me, that would mean one person or whatever. But really what we mean is around 8 people, a two pizza team. And what we have are lots and lots of thousands of small teams of this size with ownership and autonomy that can get on with innovating and experimenting. And because of the architecture and the culture and the mechanisms I've described, it's okay to fail, but our teams are enabled. They're able to innovate and execute. And thankfully, it's served us well over the 25 years that we have been around. Next, please. So at Amazon, we have had 3 ideas that have stuck with us for, as I say, 25 years now, and they are at the core of our success. The first is putting the customer first. We are extremely inventive. We're inventing our way into new industries all the time, and in those industries, reinventing the products and services that we think our customers want and need. And we're extremely patient. We're willing to be misunderstood for a long time, and we're willing to wait for our investments to pay off down the line, because it's all based on what's right for our customers. Now, next slide. Which is it. So I'm sorry to have run through that presentation rather quickly. I think we've got some questions coming up, but before we go into those, my colleagues and I at Amazon would be delighted to co-innovate with any of you. We have teams and programs to help you not only innovate, and I should have said earlier in my presentation that anything you've heard today that's of interest, you're very welcome to use. We're not saying that this is the only way to innovate or the best way to innovate even. We're just saying that it's worked for us. And you're very welcome to share any part of what you've heard today. And if you want more information on the business of innovation, please reach out to me, and I will connect you with the right person. We have great people in Sweden, for example. But also, if you want to learn more about Amazon's cloud platform, which enables rapid innovation and execution, there probably is a little bit more to Amazon's culture of innovation than I've been able to squeeze into this deck today. And one example that is among my favorites is a very, very simple concept. And that is that actually, I'm going to share 2. The first is that it's very unusual to see a document longer than 6 pages. We are allowed to include appendices, and they can be as long as you like, but no one is expected to take them too seriously. If you can't reduce your idea to 6 pages, then there's an issue that's bigger than what it is you're arguing for. So I really like that concept with Amazon. It means that things tend to be very concentrated and quick. which of course aids pace. And the other is that when we have meetings and you have a document to share with the people you've invited to the meeting, no one is obliged or expected to read that document before the meeting starts. Most meetings at Amazon, at least most of my meetings, start with quiet whilst we read the paper that we're then going to discuss. And the reason we do that is twofold. The first is that, I don't know about you, but I've written many, many papers in my career, turned up to a meeting, and it's very clear that half the room haven't read it and the other half have read half of it. And so this way we ensure that people read the paper. And the other reason we do it, of course, is that, and by the way, there's no negative connotations to what I've just said. It works very well when you can rely on the fact that you're going to have time to read it at the beginning of the meeting. Anyway, the second point is that, of course, the paper is fresh in everyone's mind when you begin the meeting. And so I like these little tricks that Amazon has learned over its existence and rolled out worldwide. And I shall keep many of them with me for the rest of my career, wherever I go. So that's about it. Very, very happy to follow up on anything I've said with any of you. It's been great to speak about innovation. But as I say, if you have any questions in the context of skills and the digital skills gap and what employers want from training programs, universities and so on, please do get in touch.
Thank you for that very interesting presentation, Mr. Sheeran. And yes, you're right, we do have a few questions for you. So it's very interesting to learn about how you have established this culture of innovation throughout Amazon Web Services. But I think that implementing core values and attitudes like this must also require both encouraging leaders, but also great skills in change management. What would you say, in your opinion, how can a leader best promote large-scale change?
Yeah, well, we certainly do have inspiring leaders among hundreds of thousands of employees across the world. But at Amazon, we're all leaders. And that is why we refer to the behaviors I just spoke about on the Helix as leadership principles. We take a great deal of care in hiring the right type of people and invest huge amounts of resources in a very comprehensive induction process. And from then on, we really allow our leadership principles to guide the way, as I say, we judge our performance and we make our decisions. And so I'd actually say that it's all about a culture and architecture, and that everyone at Amazon is leaders. And of course, like any company, we have a variance of different styles of leaders and so on. But it's really the culture and the mechanisms, the architecture that guide our decisions and our leadership. And the best leaders at Amazon are those that deeply understand our leadership principles and live by them. It's that simple.
Okay, thank you. So successes and failures, they are part of everyday life, right? And yet we tend to focus on success. Right? You agree? How do you help your staff to appreciate both sides of this evolution? And how do you make them feel that it's okay or even good progress to make mistakes?
Yeah, well, I touched on this, didn't I, in the presentation? But right from the top of the organization, we're continuously pushing people, encouraging people to experiment, to innovate on behalf of our customers. And most are clear that failure is a downside, a welcome downside, often of innovation. And the reason I say welcome is that if you're not failing, you're probably not innovating enough. And if you're not innovating enough, you're unlikely to succeed or even survive in some industries for very long. We believe that no one sets out to fail, and so we celebrate it as a symptom, as I say, of innovation. And as I said in my presentation, oftentimes, if you put in the effort to really figure out what it is you're trying to solve for, then failures can be recyclable to some extent.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, my pleasure.